So what steps might they take?
Well, listen, this vacancy right now is defense. We're replacing Justice Scalia. Both you and I knew Justice Scalia very well. He was extraordinary. He was one of a kind. By the way, I have to tell a quick Scalia story just in honor of the great jurist, which is in the early to mid-1980s, then Judge Antonin Scalia was on the D.C. Circuit. The other prominent conservative was Robert Bork. Reagan was in the White House. Everyone knew one or the other, either Scalia or Bork, was likely to get the next vacancy. They didn't know who it was going to be. And Scalia was walking through the parking lot at the D.C. Circuit. He came to the elevator, and there were two U.S. Marshals who stopped him and said, "I'm sorry, sir, we're holding this elevator for the Attorney General of the United States." Scalia pushed past them, stepped into the elevator, pushed the button, and as the door's closing, he said, "You tell Ed Meese, Bob Bork doesn't wait for anyone." And in '86, Reagan nominated Antonin Scalia. The Scalia seat is defense. We're not going to get any better than Justice Scalia. The best we can do is preserve constitutional victories like upholding the Second Amendment, like protecting religious liberty. But we're not going to get any better. This summer, I think we'll have another Supreme Court vacancy this summer. If that happens, as much as the left is crazy now, they will go full Armageddon meltdown. Because the next vacancy is where we have the ability to get back and restore our basic constitutional protections. And to give an indication of just how much impact common sense policies can have, let me actually shift for a second as we wrap up from the Constitution to a basic priority, enforcing the border. So this week I was down at the border, was down in McAllen, joined the Border Patrol, did a air patrol up in the plains.
All right, folks, we want to come back to the floor just outside the CPAC main hall, where we have a very, very special guest with us. That's Senator Jim DeMint, who's the head of the Heritage Foundation, just spoke. Senator, it's great to have you on.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for all that you guys do. You're really the cornerstone of conservatism in the country, so I appreciate it.
Well, you are a great purveyor of conservative thinking in America, and your organization, Bill and I were talking about it, has just been phenomenal. Where do you, I mean, we're a very different CPAC this year than we were last year.
Oh, yeah.
Your vision for the future now?
Guys, this is an opportunity of a lifetime for our ideas to actually make a difference. I don't expect it to be perfect. President Trump is not so much ideological as he is practical. It just so happens that conservative ideas are very practical. They work. Our job is to convince him that our ideas will make life better, make our country great again. So conservatism now is in a good spot to demonstrate to America that our ideas will make their life better. So that's what we're committed to at Heritage, is to win the hearts and minds of the American people so that the right ideas can actually get through Congress.
Well, you've worked inside the the United States Senate for a very long time. When you look at the slow pace of the Senate and even the House, I've been critical. Right now, we have an opportunity. Our time in history, we have never seen it like this before. I'm worried they are sitting back on their heels and not pushing at a time when we need to be moving forward.
I'm very worried, too. The Obamacare repeal should have gone through the first week. They passed a bill before. Every Republican in the House and Senate had voted for it. The only way to get to the point where we can begin to improve our health care system is to remove this cancer from it and then move ahead. And I'm concerned about the nominations. The Senate should be working weekends, 7 days a week, until the Democrats stop stalling. And they will stop if you make them work weekends, if 7 days a week, eventually they say, well, let's take 20 at a time or 30 at a time. But the way they're doing it now, the Democrats can string them out, go home for 10 days of recess, come back for a week or two, take 2 more weeks. We can't do that because we're losing momentum.
What is your thoughts on the filibuster doing away with the 60-vote rule? I've heard very strong constitutionalists, and I know it's not in the Constitution, but say there is a real reason for the 60-vote rule. I've heard others say the Democrats wouldn't play fair. We ought to just blow the thing up. Where do you come down on that?
The filibuster is a good rule in most situations. The problem now is the Democrat Party has become so locked into representing basically government workers and government unions that anything we do to achieve a compromise that may reduce the growth of the government or spending is anathema to the Democrats. So I don't know how this can be resolved, but fortunately most of the nominations can be done with 51 votes, but the Democrats are making Republicans run out the whole clock, which can be 3 days for each nominee. There are more than 400 that still have to be confirmed. So Mitch McConnell just needs to play tough and keep them there 24 hours a day until they get this done.
Ted Cruz just a few moments ago, just a few seconds ago, was saying we should all in this room get up and give a toast of thanks to Harry Reid, because if Harry Reid had not used the nuclear option and reduced the votes necessary from 60 to 51, we wouldn't have the cabinet that we've got now. Right. We'd have a much harder time with the Supreme Court. But Ted also said that he said that Gorsuch for Scalia is a replacement. It's you're essentially taking a very conservative justice and replacing with another conservative justice. But the next one, and it looks like he's going to get a next one, if Donald Trump nominates a conservative for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat, for example, who's a big liberal, he said that the left is going to lose their minds.
Well, they will, and they eventually the Republicans may have to look at breaking this logjam. But it's not good to run the country in a totally partisan way. Obama's going to find that out sooner or later. If you pass a health care law entitlement with no Republican votes, eventually the Republicans are going to take it down.
Sir, I constantly hear Democrats saying, well, we need to work together. We need to have bipartisanship. They would have never worked together with us. They don't want to work with us. I think the time now is to steamroll whatever we need to do right on through the House and Senate.
You're exactly right. The only way the Democrats are going to work with the Republicans is if Republicans do it their way. You don't get $20 trillion in debt without a lot of bipartisan compromise. But it's always, if you compromise, it's on the left side of the agenda. And you don't ever compromise and to spend a little less or to grow the government a little slower. I never saw a compromise like that. So when they talk compromise in the Senate, they're talking about doing it the Democrat way.
Yeah, I had talked about this. I told the story, and I have to tell you this story because it really is an honor for me to be sitting here with you. I ran for Congress against a Republican incumbent, and the paper endorsed my opponent. And they didn't endorse me. Do you know why, sir?
Me, I know.
They called me a Jim DeMint conservative. And I said, you better believe it. So for a non-endorsement, it was about as good as I could get.
Well, I'm honored that they connect us too, and I think you just have to fight for the right ideas and not try to get where the pollsters tell you to be. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but even in losing, you're breaking some ground for other people. And now what you're doing, I think, is building support for good ideas. So,
do you think you have more power now doing what you're doing in the Heritage Foundation than you did as a United States Senator?
No question about it. I mean, the senators listen to me more than they did when I was a senator. I can work with the House people. The president wants to work with us, and American people believe me more because I'm not a politician.
Well,
I don't need their vote anymore.
I'll tell you what, sir, we believe you, and thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure having you on this program.
And the great work you do.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Absolutely. So, as we say goodbye to Senator Jim DeMint, the head of the Heritage Foundation and doing great work over there, we await NRA's Dana Lash. She's a great commentator for us, a regular on Stinchfield. Every morning at 11 Central Time, she comes on the program, and so she's been invited to speak. We can go into the hall. Ted Cruz is leaving, and he got a huge applause. And I think, Bill, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, we could, while we're waiting for Dana, we could talk about some of the things that Ted said, because Ted had a lot to say. He was really terrific. One of the things that Ted said that I thought was really interesting was that he's running into Senate Democrats now who are terrified of being primaried. The whole Democratic Party thinks that they lost because Hillary Clinton was too moderate, and they're going to go hard left. And Ted was happy about that. I'm happy
Yeah,
about
of course.
that. You're happy about that too.
So here's why maybe Ted Cruz doesn't make the best poker player in the room. So what I do when I play poker, I often see horrible poker players.
yeah,
They make the worst plays. I don't tell them they're making bad plays.
No.
I don't want them to make the bad plays over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tip off the Democrats to put Elizabeth Warren up and go further to the left because it is a sure victory for us.
Fortunately, in the case of the progressives, they're incapable of learning anything, so it doesn't matter how much you tell them. Ted was talking about term limits, too, when he got started. And he basically said, this is how we drain the swamp, and how are you going to get this passed? And if you're going to drain a swamp, you're going to tick off the alligators, right? I mean, sooner or later, you're going to have to get the alligators out of the swamp. So he's talking about finding a way to get these term limits through. He said it's the one issue that basically goes across both parties with big support.
All right, let's go now to the stage where Dana Lash is speaking. Here she comes.
Hey guys. So what a task to follow the great one and then Senator Cruz, right? Thank you guys so much for being here. All right, there are a couple things that I want to talk to you guys about. First off, maybe you heard that, and I'm actually pretty stoked about this. They just announced this week a pretty cool position that I am so proud and honored to have with a group that I have been a member and defender of since I was a kid, and that's with the NRA. So technically, I know, I love them too. I am the special assistant to Wayne LaPierre's Office for Public Communication and a national spokesperson for the National Rifle Association. The original civil and natural rights group of the United States of America. And I couldn't be happier because this is such an important group. All right, so let me just get personal for a second. This is why I am on board with this group. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Hands Off My Gun. And I detailed why I do not want to be an unarmed victim. And let me tell you something. We have the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals case that's going to be making its way towards the Supreme Court. We have midterms coming up. It still isn't. We always have to protect our natural rights. I had my life protected by a firearm. Now, I get that the people like Shannon Watts and the people like Michael Bloomberg and all of these very well-to-do one-percenters that like to outsource their firearms to someone else and they think it's virtuous because they pay someone to carry them. I'm not a frillionaire like Sugar Daddy Michael. So, and I don't think y'all are either. When I was a kid, my grandparents, because all my family's from the Ozarks, when I was a kid, I was staying with my grandparents. Myself and my little cousin, we were in my grandparents' bed, and it was a late summer evening. Window was open, breeze was blowing through, and I was just about to sleep. I heard the evening news on. They were wrapping up their broadcast. And then I heard from out in the woods this wailing. It was this inhuman wailing. And at first, it didn't register with me. I kept thinking, well, maybe I'm having a bad dream. And it got closer and closer to the house. Now, down in the South, down in the Ozarks, my grandparents never locked their doors. They also don't put their guns up in these big, giant locked rooms. They keep them in wood cabinets with etched glass in the front, like a china cabinet, for guns. And this noise got closer and closer. And finally, I heard the punching of feet in my grandparents' gravel driveway. It was my aunt, who had been beaten within an inch of her life, who was running away in the woods, barefoot and bloodied with broken teeth, because her felon of an SOB ex found her, beat her up, and told her he was going to kill her. And this prohibited possessor went for his criminally possessed firearm, and she ran to my grandparents' house. Only place she knew she'd be protected. And with that, my grandpa, I was terrified at that time, he went to the bedroom, this NRA member, World War II Navy vet, went to the bedroom, grabbed his shotgun, went and sat on the front porch, cocked it and started swinging. And that made me feel safe. and I went back to sleep. Now, when you call the law down from where my family is, on average, 911 call, 20-minute response time, even longer down there. It was about 35 minutes later that the law finally did come. And as it turned out, that abusive ex-con did actually drive to my grandparents' house, turned off his lights, but when he saw the silhouette of that old vet sitting on the porch with a gun, he thought better of it. And that's because the NRA protected his rights and they protect your rights. That's what it comes down to. And you know what? Everybody sits here and talks about a big tent. Let me tell you something. All my Ozark kin, they're all blue-collar voters. These were all Clinton Democrats. You know, the Democrats, the blue-collar flyover people, my second book, Flyover Nation, that were good enough to vote for the Clinton in the 90s, but when they voted for Trump November 8th, they were suddenly racist and bigots and, you know, all this stuff. They were good enough to carry Slick Willie to the White House, but when they changed affiliation, what? They weren't good enough for you anymore? They weren't good enough for Democrats? These are the people, these blue-collar voters. You know why? Do you know why Democrats lost in November? You want to know why they lost? Because these people are worrying about how they're going to put food on their table. They're worried about how they're going to pay their premiums of the health care that they didn't lose yet. They're worried about how they're going to keep their lights on, how they're going to keep their jobs. When you had Hillary Clinton out there saying she was going to ruin the coal industry. These people were worried about being blown up if they decided to go up to the city and go out to the mall because we have domestic terror incidents. And instead of getting answers from one particular party, instead, they got lectured to about pronouns. They got lectured to about who can use whose bathroom. They got lectured about everything that has nothing to do with the vital necessities of day-to-day life. And that is why Democrats lost. They are our bitter clingers. They are this entire time. You want to know where these blue-collar voters have been? They've been in the NRA, the original big tent. They have been in the NRA, these bitter clingers, these Bible thumpers, these gun nuts, these Second Amendment extremists, those deplorables have been in the NRA this entire time. Which is why I'm on board with the NRA. I want to remind people, I was the one who introduced Trump here on stage back in 2015. Now I'm going to tell you all this, because some people need a little come to Jesus talk. And some of my friends on our side, we need to sit down, we need to have a little come to Jesus moment and have a little heart to heart for a second, right? Folks, we all know how primaries work, right? We know how primaries work? We all fight during the primaries. What happened with us during the primaries, do you know why it didn't affect me? Because that's my family reunion every year. Every Christmas, that's my table. Every Thanksgiving, that's my table. I have the amazing, wonderful, blessed DNA of being Irish, so go figure, an American Indian, and German because of my husband. So it's a little crazy. We fight during the primaries, but I'm going to tell you what. During the general election, you go to war with the soldiers you have. That's how you win. Now, we weren't united during the primary, and you know why? Because we're not hive mind. We're not betas. We fight. Metal sharpens metal. That's what we do. But the election's over. And now, I don't think that there's anyone who would say, whether they be lukewarm or never or totally pro-Trump, that they are displeased with what has been happening these first, 35, 36 days? Who can say they are never for Gorsuch? Who can say that they aren't for having a conservative Supreme Court justice? With that comes accountability. So let's not mess that up. You get what you want, we hold each other up, and we hold each other accountable. That's how it works. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we expand this coalition that we're growing. And like I said, you know, when I go back to these blue dogs, I read a New York Times editorial that said Democrats were being urged to go further left. Okay. The only way that Democrats are ever going to win is if they figure out how to run Jim Webb. And even then, I don't think that they would come around to him. No, by the way, I want to give a shout out to all those blue dog Democrats who went out and swung this election because they voted guns, they voted jobs, they voted manufacturing, they voted trade. They didn't vote bathrooms and pronouns and Beyonce and everything else. And you know what? Sorry, Democrats, we stole your girl. You know what? I look at it like this. Because of those blue dog Democrats that we stole, actually, they were with the NRA the entire time. The NRA brought them and helped and encouraged them to vote for freedom and made sure, look, this is what is on the ballot. And now, as a result of this, we got Neil Gorsuch knocking at the door. As a result of this, we have real generals making decisions in like the State Department, Pentagon, Department of Defense. These are great decisions. And you're not going to find no bigger tent than what you find at the NRA. You won't. Men, women, black, white, gay, straight, Democrat, Republican. I've talked to so many members that the media with their fake news, that they want to ignore. Y'all want to know what the face of the NRA looks like? All you people back there, because it seems like whenever there's some sort of, shooting or some sort of tragedy, y'all go to some lobbyist who used to work for Monsanto instead of coming and talking to actual gun owners. This here is the face of the NRA. I am a face of the NRA. Maj Touré is the face of the NRA. Chris Chang is a face of the NRA. Pink Pistols are a face of the NRA. Get it right. This is the organization for people who want to have a fighting chance. All day, every day. Now I'm going to tell you something else. This is the organization for women who don't want to be afraid if they stop at the grocery store to get some milk at night after working all day, and they got to get milk and toilet paper for their family, and they got to stop at the grocery store. I don't want to feel afraid walking to my car at night because you have these lobbyist groups out there who think it's virtuous to be a victim and not virtuous to be an armed defender of yourself and your family. If you care about winning the midterms, because remember, Gorsuch doesn't change balance of power, but the next one will. Remember that. You care about midterms, if you care about saving the balance of power for Supreme Court, if you care about national reciprocity, if you care about the Hearing Protection Act, if you care about a wall, insert constitutional freedom here. If you care about that, you're not going to find another organization that fights like this. I'm going to tell you something. We fight like hell, period. Now, I will encourage you, you can use your phone to sign up. You can use your phone and you can sign up to become a fighting member of a bedrock institution, the original Big Tent, the original Rights Coalition, the coalition that was fighting for our right to bear arms. And I'm going to tell you guys something. I'll tell you back there, wherever you are, for all of those people who like to say that women are too stupid to own guns and don't preach to me about female empowerment while you simultaneously tell me that I am too weak and stupid to own a gun. We had the right to bear arms before we had the right to vote, and I'll be damned if you take that from me. God bless you all. Go sign up today. Thank you.
All right, so that is, we can now say the NRA is Dana Lash, and she's a great friend of NRATV, and she comes on Stinchfield all the time, 11 o'clock Central every day, and then followed up at 12 Central with Bill Whittle coming on the show every day. Bill.
Yeah, that Dana's she's a shy little wallflower, isn't she? She was out there. She was like Spartacus or Ben-Hur. I mean, she's dressed in this black leather, she's just whipping this crowd, and it's just, wow, she's a dynamo.
And so you see what she did there. She literally called out the mainstream media. She looked back at them. She walked towards them as if she was taunting the mainstream media. And I tell you, it's a page out of Donald Trump's book, because the mainstream media needs to be taunted. They need to get with the program that they do not represent America. They think they do. They, in the little bubble of New York and California, they think that that's the world. They are so mistaken.
What Donald Trump has done is he has absolutely destroyed the press and Hollywood, because he's done the one thing that they never expected would happen, and that is he doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about what the press thinks. He doesn't care about what Hollywood thinks. He goes out there. If any other president, any other political figure ever, Grant, had ever been called out by Meryl Streep and said, all these things that Meryl Streep said at the Golden Globes, any other president, any other politician would have just ignored it. But he's, you're a overrated loser and a has-been, and you're friends with Hillary, and it destroys them. They can handle criticism barely, but laughter and mockery, they're finished. They're done.
I'll tell you, and I'll admit, I have he's become a very good buddy. He comes on my radio program a lot. This is a correspondent for Westwood One, and he's a member of the mainstream media. He does a pretty good job of being fair and balanced, but off air,
yeah,
he's got his biases. And I will tell you that there are an awful lot of these reporters that just despise the notion of Donald Trump. They can't fathom it. They don't understand what the American people were thinking. And the reason is they, as we've said about living in this bubble, they go back to their little condo in New York, and they go there and they think all is well in the world because they have a doorman keeping them safe. Many of them have even armed security, some
Absolutely.
of them. And they don't understand what it's like to be an everyday citizen who's got to take this upon themselves to protect themselves. And really go out there, work for a living, work hard for a living. They don't get it. Because I'll tell you, Bill, when it comes to media, I guess you consider us media. Mm-hmm. This isn't work.
No.
And any reporter that tells you this is work, or an anchor person that tells you this is work, they're lying to you.
I haven't been to work in 8 years, I don't think. These people that you're talking about in the media and in Hollywood, they actually live within two bubbles, because they're in the bubble inside America. So here's America, and here's the mainstream, the actual genuine feelings of the American people, and they're isolated from that. But the second bubble they're in is they live in America. They don't have a clue what's going on in the third world. They don't see the beheadings. They don't see the stonings. They don't see people being set on fire. They don't see the murders. They don't see any of it. They don't see any of this world outside of this bubble that's protected this country through the sacrifice of our men and women in the military. It's this force field that keeps all this stuff out of here, and they haven't got the faintest idea what's going on in the actual world.
And it does amaze me that they think the job is stressful. And so I worked in mainstream media. I worked in local TV from New York to Montana and just about everywhere in between, ending my career in Dallas. And I would look at what people think in the newsrooms. And overwhelmingly, even local newsrooms, they were liberal. And they weren't the devious liberals. What they were young people that got into journalism as if they would have gone to work for a nonprofit. And working for a nonprofit is very good work too, but it was a different view of the world that somehow we really should be living amongst unicorns and under rainbows. And that world really doesn't exist. And then I would watch them get all stressed out in a breaking news situation or on election night. And I thought to myself, who grew up in a family where I had a father who was a contractor, employed a few people, and I'd watch sometimes where he'd struggle to make payroll. I have two businesses now. Look, just while on air, I had a guy quit. I had a truck they filed a complaint against, and I'm doing all this. And I'll tell you what, you can't make payroll one week, and you got 12 guys, 15 guys, 40 guys. That's real stress at the end of a week. You're a stockbroker and you lose millions of dollars. If you're a brain surgeon and you screw up with one little tick of that is real stress. Coming and covering an event like CPAC or the inauguration of a new president, that is not stressful. That should be an honor. You get to watch history happen. And yet they think they are so self-grandized that their job is the most important in the world.
What I think the kind of people that go into being reporters are people who tend to be a little idealistic and maybe they want to, bring truth to the world. But what's happened for the last 20 or 30 years or longer now is they go to these journalism schools, and essentially, in a nutshell, what they're taught is they're taught that there's the truth and then there's the truth. The little truth is what's actually happening out there, but the big truth is what should be happening out there. And so they basically decide what they're going to tell, what they're not going to tell, what they're going to cover up based on this ideology they have of exactly what you said, of a fantasy world that doesn't exist and can't exist. But everything they do, they go through this filter of, is it true or is it something that should be true? And if it's something that should be true, then they don't care if it's true or not.
And so what you get now is that you have those kids come up, and you know what? In some respects, I'm happy we have people in the world that have somewhat of a fantasy view of things, and maybe it keeps everybody a little calmer. As they grow up, they start to realize the real world. Most of them end up becoming conservatives
Right.
and Republicans. The problem, what I've seen in journalism, is so you get the kids with the fantasy view, and they mean well, and they want to help people that don't have a voice, and all those are noble causes. The higher up you get in media, the more devious it becomes. And you become where you have bosses, news directors, higher-ups, general managers who push this liberal thinking in newsrooms across the country and certainly at a national level. And they infect these young journalists' minds that this is the way to do it, whether it's liberalism, whether it's sensationalism. And I'll tell you, sensationalism sells. You can still entertain without being sensationalistic. And they push all of this on these young journalists. And then what happens is, when you get to a big market, when you get to the national network, they become devious in the way that they push their liberal thought. And now they are not just uninformed or misinformed.
They're lying.
They're lying.
Yeah.
And they are working for the opposition party.
Absolutely. And I had a chance to talk to a member of the LA Times a long time ago, 2003 or 4, something like that. And I questioned this guy about his liberal bias. He says, well, yeah, that's all. All that liberal bias, though, is canceled out by our editors. Our editors, you see, cancel out the bias. And I said, well, first of all, your editors come from reporters, so your editors are as liberal as you are. But it's a different kind of thing as well. If you've got liberals in the field, then the stories against liberals don't even get to the editor. It's not even pitched. No one even pitches an idea about something that might actually hurt Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. So, you know, here's the thing no one talks about, Grant, is we talk about the power of the media, and we talk about them telling false stories, but the actual most power they have is to not report a story. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, we have a good idea of some degree of the magnitude of Hillary Clinton's email scandal and the security breach and the corruption and all the rest. So we know what that is. But if the average person hears it on Fox or NRATV or BillWhittle.com, but they don't hear it on CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, if they don't hear it there, then they are basically being told it's not a real story. It's one of these right-wing lunatic things or those faux news people are listening to.
It is the stories that you don't hear that are often the most damaging, and this happens in local news markets across the country. So I was in Hartford, Connecticut as an investigative reporter in some rough times towards the mid-'90s, I guess it would have been. Mid to late 90s, and the Hartford Insurance Company, a major employer in Hartford, is going through all kinds of problems. They lay off thousands of employees. The CEO of the Hartford was doing an interview with CNBC at my NBC station. I went to my news director and said, hey, I'd like to do an interview with him. You know, he took millions of dollars in stock options. He took a huge bonus. I said, bonus is meant for good work, not for bad work. They laid off thousands of people. I'd like to do an interview with him. Do you mind? She says, yeah, just don't ambush him. Ask him for an interview. Now, he's the CEO. I asked him for an interview in the parking lot of that TV station. Now, he knows he's coming to a TV station, so I'm not surprising him by busting into his office and not having him time to prepare. And I asked him about those very things. You laid off all these people, thousands of people. The economy is struggling. You took millions in stock options. Well, he hammered and stammered. He looked foolish because a bonus is supposed to be for productivity. And so in the end, what happened was I bring this back, I put together a piece, and not 10 minutes later, I get a call from the secretary of the general manager's office saying, you will not air that story. I said, why not? Well, he says you can't air it. It turns out he plays golf with him at his country club.
That's right.
And so that story didn't air, a story
right.
that affected thousands of people in Hartford. And do you know what that general manager went on to be? This general manager or vice president of CNBC.
Yeah, what a surprise.
And so you think you're getting the story on financial news from CNBC? I don't think so.
It's all part, you know, we did a story just a couple days ago about this make-believe alternate universe where Hillary is president. It's a website that the progressives have, and they can go and see articles about President Hillary Clinton and so on, and it's easy to make fun of. But so much of that worldview of theirs just doesn't make sense. It's just based on, you know, I talk about this sometimes, Grant. It's the difference between wishful thinking and magical thinking. Wishful thinking would be something like, be nice if Obama went away or something. Magical thinking is the belief that if I believe in this hard enough, it's going to actually happen. And this is what they believe. If we believe in this discredited, murderous economic and political system long enough, then heaven on earth is going to actually appear here, and we're going to get it. They're immune to history or reason or logic or facts or anything, because it's all about this belief. That belief alone will get you there.
Yeah, and it won't. And you can bring that up even when we talk about gun-free zones.
Sure, perfect example.
Perfect example. So liberals think if we outlaw guns in all these areas, that the criminals will obey the law and they'll put their weapons down and they won't come in and they won't kill anybody. When in reality, we know that is not the truth.
Yeah, I mean, just try to think about how stupid you have to be. Let's assume, for example, that you're somebody who wants to go and shoot up a high school. You're not going to be deterred by a gun-free zone in the same way that you wouldn't be deterred by it being a tow-away zone, right? We can't park in front of this building because it's a tow-away zone. I'm going to try and murder 50 people. I'm not much concerned about these kind of silly little things.
That's exactly right. And so I just did an interview with Belgium TV. See, that's okay, ma'am. How are you? Excited to be here?
Yes, I can't talk to you, though.
All right, there you go. Very good. She can't talk to us. She's a volunteer. She's not allowed to talk to us. No talking to NRATV.
What about the wait a minute. What happened about the constitutional wall of separation between amateurs and media people?
Right.
That was enshrined in our Constitution somewhere, wasn't it?
Right. It was enshrined in it. It was. All right, so here comes Dana Lash. In 1 second. And she's, as you can see behind her, she is a star.
Well, that's
She's
our
a
job.
So we're going to come to her.
Our
in a
job
moment.
basically is to maintain some kind of air presence until she arrives.
You better believe it. And there she comes.
Hey,
the
stranger.
woman of the hour, Dana. It is. Look at this. That we're going to get it all on tape, live TV.
Hands on. When I got a perfect swoop happening, you guys don't even understand this.
Long time no see, darling. How you been?
How are you?
We were here 5 years ago, and we were in a different booth, and we were doing our little Bewitched
right?
Samantha and Darren routine for a couple days. It was
right?
fun.
Remember that?
Dana, let me
Those
tell you
good old
something
days.
right off the bat.
Yes, sir.
I love you walked up to those media folks, you pointed at their eyes, and you said, you are the problem, didn't you?
Yeah.
I loved it.
Well, I saw all of them just kind of assembled back there. And you know what really, just frankly, what really ticked me off is I'm wondering what story is going to come out of this. What story is going to come out of this conference? Because I saw pictures on Twitter and I saw this stuff online. You have like that Richard Spencer guy that got thrown out, this like white nationalist, I don't know who the hell this guy is. He was raised in Highland Park. I mean, for crying out loud, they probably put caviar in his bottle, and he wants to act like he's so oppressed or something. And then all the media starts focusing on this guy. One dude. Right. One guy who is not even anywhere near representative of all of the people here.
And in fact,
and that's
it was
what
people
infuriated
here,
me.
They were calling him out. The people here were calling him out.
And they won't write about that.
Of course
they won't write about that at all. And that's what infuriates
Remember
me.
in the early days of the Tea Party, they were saying the Tea Party's really, really racist. And the problem was they couldn't come up with any signs. They couldn't find any actual Tea Party signs that were racist signs. So these progressives got together and said, well, in order to prove how racist these Tea Party people are, we're going to have to make racist signs, pretend to be members of the Tea Party, and then go and hold them up. And this is I don't even know what to say about this. We're going to manufacture the evidence necessary to make a point of view that simply does not exist.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And conservatives hold each other up and hold each other accountable.
Yeah, look at Mike Flynn. I mean, he certainly there's nothing he did that struck me as a real national security threat, but he lied to his boss. Gone. Gone. Hillary Clinton takes hundreds of millions of dollars, sells our uranium to the Russians, and puts all of the information and the entire security system of the country is out on a server, and it's on a laptop of a absolute pervert, and nothing, no calls for resignation, nothing.
No, I agree.
Dana, let me ask you. So you did a great job for the NRA and NRATV, and that was to hear the cheers in the room. There's not many places you can go in America today where you hear cheers like that when you talk about guns and gun rights, and it had to be great up there to feel that from the crowd.
Well, and the other thing is I want people to realize that the original big tent is the NRA. I can't tell you how many times I hear it when people call into my radio program, and I know you hear this too, Grant. These are people they're Democrats too. They're not Republicans. They're Democrats. They're atheists. they're gay. They're not what you would think of as the stereotypical NRA member. And there are tons of them out there. But they don't get any attention, anything at all. And it's because the media, it is more convenient for the media if the NRA looks like some elderly white man as opposed to really who all of the people are in the NRA, as opposed to showing all those folks.
Are you calling Bill and I elderly?
No, you guys aren't elderly.
It's not just.
I mean, like an elderly, like with the posture of like a cocktail shrimp.
Yeah,
elderly.
average age is deceased elderly. It's not like it's convenient for them. It's essential for them. Their entire sales pitch is predicated on the idea of making every single person in the country who has different values than they do. They make them feel that they're the only one left and that the forces of history are against you and you're just a dinosaur. You might as well just shut up and kind of wander off into your golden years retirement. Right. And that's why the election of Donald Trump shook these people up so much, because they started reading their own press releases, and all of a sudden it's like, what he got? How many votes?
Yeah. Dana, you've been coming here for a long time. Can you feel the difference this year compared to last?
A little. I mean, I haven't been out on the floor too terribly much, but I feel, so last year I felt that people were kind of not so much nervous. They almost felt defeatist. It's kind of hard to describe.
No, I know
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like they felt defeatist, and they felt, I think so many people went into the election honestly thinking that Hillary Clinton, now look, never underestimate the Clinton machine, but I think that they went in there thinking that she was much more powerful and that she carried much more favor with her base than she actually did.
And Donald Trump wasn't the force that he was yet during CPAC the last time. I mean, I think he got 15% of the straw poll here. This really isn't Donald Trump's base when you think about Donald Trump's base.
No, this is not his base at all.
This is Ted Cruz's base.
But the point, and you're right about that, and I find that interesting. This is Cruz's base. This is Mike Lee's base. But this is the reality. You in the primary is like what I said there. Because I was critical of Trump during the primary. I was critical of Cruz, too. I was really critical of Romney in 2012. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't hold back. But I think that that's your responsibility.
That's right.
If the left, and this is why I find this so important, the people who are in the middle, the independents who are not nerds like us, they don't trust what the left says about our candidates. But at the same time, they don't necessarily trust the good things that we say about our candidates because they think, okay, well, they're biased, which is why I think it's incredibly important that you give credit where it's due, and when you constructively criticize, that's the point. But the big thing is, you don't, if it's not a criticism that does not get you towards your end goal, why do it? If it's not a fight that does not push you towards your end goal, why would you engage in that fight?
You know what's interesting is, so you host a conservative talk show. You have your conservative videos and come on NRATV. I have a conservative talk show and do NRATV. I was with another conservative talk show host at a luncheon for conservatives, and a Democratic senator from Texas walked in. His name was Royce West. Very, very big liberal. Nice guy, but just wildly misguided. And he says, what do you guys all get together and you yuck it up? And we actually said, no. We actually disagree on a lot of things. The three of us could sit here. We're all strong conservatives.
Absolutely.
There are plenty of things we disagree with about what the best policy might be, and that's the difference between conservative and liberalism, because they all just follow blindly like sheep.
If
exactly.
You get off the reservation on abortion and you're a progressive Democrat, you're not a progressive Democrat anymore. And not only that, you don't have any friends anymore either. You don't have any friends anymore. You don't have any connections anymore. People who have known you for 35, 40 years, you express any kind of deviation from the party line, and you're unfriended, and you're not invited to parties anymore. And people who, I hear stories all the time, Grant, from conservatives out in Hollywood. I was the best man at this guy's wedding, and he found out that I voted for Mitt Romney, and he says we're not friends anymore. We can never speak again. What kind of a diseased mind do you have to have politics take up that much of your space in your head and your heart, you know?
Right.
They give up people you've known your entire life because they voted differently than you.
No, I agree.
I think you'll see that I'm and all of you too, are happy to debate the issues.
Absolutely.
With anybody in an easy, informative manner without letting emotion take over, but liberals can't seem to have that happen. And I experienced that in my own family. I've got sisters, one sister to say, really, that just, I mean, she just cannot understand any of it, and you can't even have a conversation with her.
Right. No, I know. Well, all of my family, I'm sort of the, it's weird. I think up until this election, I was sort of the black sheep in my family because I have one other cousin. And I mean, we're a huge family. I mean, huge. I have like 33 cousins. So it's a big family.
Right.
Me and one other. It was only us that think the way that I do.
Right.
And so when I first went back as a conservative to my family for Thanksgiving, I was not allowed to sit at the table with my grandma and grandpa. I sat at the little kids' table because they had a Republican bumper sticker on my car when I drove down. And my family, like with their cigarettes hanging out their mouths, and they saw my car pull in and they went, "Girl, what you got on your car?" And they could not even believe it. And yeah, it was weird. They don't talk about what I do. It's like I have, and I'm just going to be out with it, I have like drug addicts in my family that get more grace than I do. I'll be honest with you.
No, it's true.
If I was
It's
stripping
true.
and selling meth, they would have more, there would be more acceptance.
Because we believe that they're mistaken and they think that we're evil. And the reason they have to lock her out and put her at another table is because if your entire political and economic view is dependent on things that aren't real, you cannot have any light coming into that room. Everything has to reinforce everything else. You got to have this echo chamber, because if anybody presents a different opinion that makes sense, then the whole thing comes apart. And not only do you not have a philosophy, you don't have any friends anymore or family or anything.
You know, it was funny. Belgium TV just came up,
Yeah.
and I did an interview with Belgium TV. So you can
How did that
imagine how
go?
they feel about firearms. Well, I flipped it on them, right? So he comes out instantly, "What do you think about 35,000 gun deaths?" And I instantly
It's not even true.
flipped it on him, and he was at a loss when you talked about God-given rights, when you talked about the ability to defend yourself. I said, if I'm at a movie theater with your child and I'm armed and a shooter comes in, are you glad I'm with the child? They don't know how to answer.
No.
They do not know how to answer.
And they also don't. This is where facts are kind of useful with these people. Plano, Texas is probably the most heavily armed place in the world.
I think my street, my cul-de-sac pretty much is.
with the
that, too.
exception
I
of
think,
that one,
Dana,
which
your house. I know your husband.
We do
Oh, yeah.
we do a little set aside for you. But seriously, Plano, Texas, everybody in Plano, Texas is armed to the teeth. They've got rifles, they got spears, they got 22s, 45s, they got sharp rocks, they got broken glass.
Sharp rocks!
They're ready. And if you look at the murder rate, in Plano, Texas, which is the gun capital of the world, it is lower than it is in Belgium. It's lower than it is in Switzerland. It's lower than it is in New Zealand. You get that? The place with the most guns has a lower murder rate than any of those countries.
Yeah.
So the murder rate for America is a result of these urban hellholes that have been run by Democrats for a
Right.
century or so.
Right.
Dana, when you look at what you'd like to see come out of this, so say Saturday night, the conference is over and people are talking, what do you want people to be saying about CPAC 2017?
That there's unity and identity. That's one of the things I'd like to see. I'd also like to see a renewed effort to make sure that Congress, because everybody's focusing so much attention on the executive branch, nobody's sort of looking at what the House and Senate are doing. I don't want to see anybody walk away from just gutting Obamacare. I don't want people to walk away from the promises that have been made from a budget reform that doesn't include a consumption tax in addition to what we already do. There are a number of things that I would like to see renewed pressure on. I would like to see, hopefully, everybody can say, yeah, national reciprocity should be included in the first 100 days. You know, we'd love to see, Ty, that would be wonderful. So I hope that something like that, a renewed, a decided identity, because I know that people feel like, well, how are we defined? And you're defined by what you support. You already have a definition. You're defined by what you believe in and by the policies that you're supporting. You don't have that. You're already defined.
One of the things I'm going to take away from this as just genuinely good news is this giant divide that we had this time last year seems to be healing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, all of 2016 was very painful for me because people we've stood shoulder to shoulder to are now at absolute nuclear war with each other on the same side over Donald Trump, non-Donald Trump. But I've noticed since the election and certainly since the inauguration that these two camps are moving much closer together, that the conservative picks that he's made and the actions he's taken so far have really reinforced a lot of, textbook conservatives' opinion of this guy.
I think that anyone who is pushing division at this point anymore, it's because they make money off of it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Absolutely. So here's what concerns me the most is for decades, we have had politicians come to this conference, Republicans, and tell everybody walking the hall they're going to do one thing. Lord knows how long we heard that Obamacare was going to be repealed as soon as we took over the White House, and we're still waiting for that to happen. They will come here and tell everybody what they want to hear, and they'll go back to the halls of Congress not far from here. And the complete opposite will happen. And, we have a chance in history right now to go on the offensive, to really push through conservative principles and policies that will benefit everybody in America. And for some reason, you have establishment politicians that are sitting back and they are not acting. And the time to act is now. We have a chance. They better grab it and run.
No, this is it, because 3 seats are all Democrats need in order to take the majority in the Senate. 25 out of 33 races they're defending. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility to think that it will not happen.
No,
and if it doesn't happen in 2018, 2020.
We know we have 2 years. We probably have 4, but we know we've got 2 years. And more, it's not just a missed opportunity. It's initiative. Who's got the initiative here? Right. For the first time in my life, the conservatives have had the initiative. We're acting on them and we're not being acted upon. We're moving the ball and they're trying to catch up with us. And as long as we keep moving that ball, they're absolutely lost. But if we stop long enough for them to recruit, they're going to rebuild that narrative. They're going to start telling that story again and again and again about Donald Trump's corrupt. He's not legitimate. Oh, blah 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 blah. And if we don't keep moving, we're going to be in real trouble.
And conservatives and Republicans need to find a way to coexist under this tent, because out of all of the different factions on the right, the biggest friction is there. You know, your 80% friend is not your 20% enemy, as
right.
Reagan said. And people need to wake up to that, because I don't think that there are any conservative that can look at what's happened in like the first 35 or 36 days and say, oh, I don't like that. I mean, granted, you may not love everything, but you like about 90% of it.
Madison
so
Gorsuch alone.
Learn how to win.
Yeah. You know, the truth is I'm guilty of that. I tell you, I get so angry at establishment Republicans who sit back, and I let it consume me at times. Because I'm thinking we have this, but you are correct. They're certainly a better friend to me than the Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumers of the world.
They're not just okay. I mean, Mattis for defense secretary, that alone is worth Trump
I am
victory.
Like the biggest Mattis fan.
Me too. Enormous. And you got McMaster's at National Security, and you've got DeVos. You couldn't ask for more conservative people. These are A-list picks, and we're getting all of them. And that, to me, took whatever concern I might have had, oh, maybe Donald Trump's a secret Democrat, or maybe Donald Trump. No, there's evidence now. He's made decisions.
Then he's the worst Democrat ever.
Okay, great, I'll take that.
Be polite, be respectful, but be prepared to kill everyone you meet.
But
a great line from Mattis. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Everything that comes out of his mouth is a quote for history.
I'll tell you, my favorite is actually a little better than this. Right when the tide in Iraq was starting to turn and the surge was starting to work, Mattis went and talked to a bunch of Iraqi tribal leaders, and he basically came in there, very humble, genuinely humble, and he said, listen, I come to you in peace. I'm not bringing my artillery with you, and I'm begging you with a tear in my eye, if you F with me, I will kill you all.
Right.
And
he said what they do here, they will write about. What we do here, they will write about for thousands of years.
And that's a language that they understand.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So what's on the agenda for you here now? Any more speaking engagements?
I do some meet and greets, and I'll have a couple of interviews in that, and then if there's any protesters, which I really disappointed in that, because I always look for trouble immediately.
Yeah, you know, you and Andrew Breitbart, the only people I ever knew that looked for trouble. I miss him very much.
We would immediately get to a place and be like, okay, where can we go and get into a fight? Right. Like, where can this happen? Do
you remember when it might have been at CPAC where there was this a lot of people protesting Breitbart, and Andrew went out and got some roller skates and roller skated.
It was in L.A.
Was it?
Yeah, that was in L.A. And then he told everybody, "Would you like to go to Applebee's? Let's all go to Applebee's."
Do you know? Do you remember what I told the young man here, the college kid?
Mm-hmm.
I said, as you go through life, learn to thrive off confrontation.
Yeah, it makes you fit.
Yeah. And you don't have to attend every fight to which you're invited, but you do have to attend all the smart ones.
There you go. Very, very good. Very, very good.
That almost was like Mattis level. It's not quite, but
no, it's up there. Well, you need to drop a couple F-bombs and threaten to kill people, and you got a Mattis,
don't make me kill you.
A Mattis quote
and then that's
generator.
like gets it better. Yeah.
Can you imagine that 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, that we're talking about national reciprocity and things like legalizing suppressors in America, not legalizing, but make it easier to buy them. It is amazing how far we've come and how short a time it takes to get there, to talk about that. I mean, look, I know you carry, I carry, and I'm in Maryland, and I can't carry here. And this is a prime example. We say some controversial things. We all do.
mean, heaven forbid. You know, we say, like, Constitution.
Yeah,
it's scary.
But we don't lose our First Amendment rights when we come into Maryland, so why do we have to lose our Second Amendment rights?
And I had nothing to protect myself. You know, Bill had a little too much to drink last night. I figured I was going to protect him. I got to protect him. I'm standing there next to him. I said, Bill, I got you. If anything
you guys
happens.
have cameras going when this happens? Please tell me.
I didn't have too much to drink. Everybody around me was not drinking enough.
I'm teasing.
No, we had a blast. We had an absolute blast, and it was fun being around people who get it. And you're right. the world has just changed so dramatically and so quickly. I still can't believe it. We got it all. We've got it all. We got the presidency. We got
Right.
the Congress. We
But
got the courts.
I do wish that we would get. I do wish that we would get the suppressor situation. Because the arguments that I've seen against it from some of the anti-gun groups, how they say, well, Bill, how are you going to hear the bad guys coming? If they're shooting at you, you can hear them. But if they put that suppressor on, you can't hear it. By the time you hear it, it's,
you know why? The reason they say this is because they are so ignorant of the facts that they think that a suppressor works like it used to on Man from U.N.C.L.E.,
Yes.
That's what they think.
It's not like that.
No,
at all.
it's nothing like that. And that's what they think. It's like, they don't know anything about anything. You know what? Here's what's interesting about this, Dana. As they get pushed more and more into a corner, they get more and more ridiculous.
Yes.
You were talking about the Fourth Circuit Court a minute ago.
Oh my gosh!
The definition,
dumbest ruling, dumbest ruling ever. Did you read this?
Yes. When you take when you take that to the American people and you say the definition of whether you can have a weapon or not is if it's something that might be
That's
useful
like.
in war,
Yeah.
then you can't have it.
Well, on page 9 they were saying if it's like an M16. Because they were they bastardized Heller in their decision. They bastardized Heller, and they were saying, well, Heller made mention of an M16, so we're saying that if it's like an M16, my youngest son has a pellet gun that looks like an M16.
Yeah.
Is that because it
Outlaw
looks like?
in
Is that
Maryland.
an assault weapon?
And I'd rather have a pellet gun than nothing if I was in combat. If I had a choice of a
Exactly.
pellet gun or nothing.
There's so many things wrong with that ruling,
Well,
and so
it's-
many
but that's-
things that
but
they
that's my point.
misunderstood about the advent of the AR-15 and everything else.
That's my point, though. They are now starting to look so ridiculous, don't you think, Rand? When they say, "Well, if the weapon might be useful in wartime, you can't have it." What kind of idiot says
ridiculous.
something like
It's
that?
absolutely ridiculous, and it has nothing to do with the Constitution said nothing about weapons of war in them. And so what I would say is that the liberals need to wake up to reality, and that gun owners in America are some of the most responsible people
Of course they are.
on earth. Gun owners in America are the most responsible people on earth.
You know who would talk about that Fourth Circuit Court ruling? Because aren't you going to be talking to Senator Cruz coming up?
Yes,
Because
hopefully.
he
I
filed
was
an
thinking
amicus
maybe on his
brief.
way here.
Well, if you want, I can fly out like a spider monkey and grab his
Grab
ankle.
him.
But because he filed the amicus brief in Heller, in the Heller decision, and he was also very vocal about the Otis McDonald fight, the handgun ban in Chicago. And I'm very interested in hearing what he thinks about the Fourth Circuit Court's logic and the reasoning that they had for that, because that's something, Grant, that's going to go towards the Supreme Court. This is why having that balance of power, because Gorsuch is great, he's an originalist like Scalia, it doesn't change the balance of power. Let's
No,
be honest about it.
And you and I talked about, the importance of the Supreme Court, but we talk about activist judges all the time. So when you get to the heart of this ruling, what this was activist judges putting their own beliefs into law, and they usurp the duties of Congress, our rights, for their own beliefs, and they live in you want to talk about an alternative reality.
Right.
They are the ones living there.
Ted said that the Fourth Circuit decision, and the Ninth for that matter, against the immigration executive order, he said they were utterly lawless. He said that at no point during those decisions was a statute ever quoted, no precedent, nothing. It's simply, I don't like this, so
Right.
there you go. And this is how they're going to fight. And I think that the more they do this, the more the American people are going to realize that they're just kind of barking mad.
So
No, exactly.
Now, one of the problems that Donald Trump will face is when you talk about appointing judges across America, senators have to approve those judges. So that means liberal senators still have the right to veto a judge offered up by a Republican president in Donald Trump. So they keep going back to Robart when we see that ruling about his immigration ban, and they say, oh, well, that was a Bush supporter. I mean, a Bush appointee.
Right.
Well, Bush appointed that judge in a state like Washington where he had to have the approval of Democratic senators. So just because it's an appointee doesn't mean all of a sudden
Right.
we are going to change the balance of these courts and all of a sudden we're going to have true constitutionalists on every court. That is not going to happen.
Exactly. No, and for that reason that a lot of people that you just described, a lot of people are not familiar with, that's how that process works. That's how those judges come to be, and that you have to pick from the pool that comes up in that state. And if it's, you have Democrats choosing, you're going to get Democrats.
And you know who's not aware of it? The media.
Well,
they were first to say it's a Bush appointee.
My understanding is that the Constitution says that at any point the Congress can simply declare the entire Ninth Circuit, no, you're all fired.
No,
You're
that is-
absolutely
Well, there is
fired.
legislation. I know that they've been trying to push to divide that, because back when it was created, this was like, what was this, back in the 40s, where there were so few people that were out there in that particular district, because it goes all the way out to Guam, for crying out loud. There's no reason it needs to be that big. They can divide it up and create, I think, what, a 12th circuit? I think that's what they were
That
talking
was
about
what they're
doing
talking
with it.
about. And so Congress does control how the courts are set up. If Congress wanted
That's what
to,
we need to push for.
it
Congress
could throw out
could simply say to everybody on the Ninth Circuit, "Thank you for your service. You're done."
Right.
And they have the power to do that.
They do.
Right.
They have the power to
agree.
completely rework the entire criminal justice system if they wanted to.
What about that?
Wouldn't
So,
that be great?
now,
I doubt
but
they ever have the guts
You were
to go.
saying about this all day today. I mean, if we fought as long as we did for 8 years and all that we went through, only to find ourselves with a Republican president, a Republican Senate, a Republican House, and nothing gets done, then that is, where do you go from
Right.
there? You know.
I agree.
Well, we've seen Wayne LaPierre come out, and you know, he's a friend of yours, and boy, he spells it out. It doesn't need very long to spell it out about the time is now, go on the offensive.
Yeah.
He needs about 30 seconds, and that man gets his message across.
He sure
Yes,
does.
he does. The original mic dropper.
He is, isn't he? So I believe we're waiting for Ted Cruz to come through. It is interesting. You know, we haven't talked about this today. Facebook has a presence here. Do you remember
I just
last
saw
year?
that. Yeah.
Facebook,
Big
did
Facebook
not
win.
have any presence here. They didn't give any money to this conference last year. Then they called the big meeting with conservatives.
Is
Now
this a
they're
result
here.
of that?
I believe this is a result of that, and I believe they gave about $120,000 this year.
But they got so slammed by people
$120,000.
who were so angry that conservatives were meeting with them. That's what I don't get. You cannot react that way. We have to be able to meet and talk with people who disagree with us, and we have to be able to compete on the battlefield of ideas. We cannot sequester ourselves away and think that we're only going to preach to the choir. Choir's the only people we're going to talk to. Only people we're going to preach to. You know, this is a choir right here. We're not going to get outside this choir. That's not how it works.
Were you part of that meeting at
No,
all? No,
I was not.
So would you
I
have
know
gone if
everybody
you
who
were
was.
invited?
Oh, of course. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, I think I never ever will not go and miss an opportunity to plant a seed somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The worst sort of evangelist is the one who doesn't go out and evangelize. You have to go out and do that.
And I tell conservative leaders too, don't be afraid of the likes of MSNBC or CNN, that the most important place that they can
Record
go
everything.
on, maybe, the most important place they can go on are those outlets, because those are people you will be talking to that aren't normally getting the message that they need to hear.
Right.
And so
Right,
I
no,
know
I
you're a
agree.
big contributor to Fox News, and I love Fox News, and I watch them all the time.
I
But
go on CNN too.
well, that's the
I'll
place
go on
really you need to
MSNBC.
spend all the time, because the people
I've
watching
gone on
CNN
HBO.
and around Bill Maher. How did that go? Did he treat you well?
Yeah, it did. He tried to call me a teabagger, and I said, "Well, you know what that means, right? You're the baggee."
Oh, God.
Sorry.
yeah,
I
no,
mean,
no, no.
But still, I mean, it needed to be said.
No,
I
that's
was
it.
like, I mean,
That's
if
it.
you're all right being in that position,
Right.
that's
got-
on you, dude.
Oh, I'm not even going
No,
to
you gotta
ask
kick-
my follow-up question.
gotta
I'm
kick
gonna-
away
I'm gonna
their-
skip the follow-up.
Got to kick away their unearned moral superiority, and if you can mock them, they're finished. Whenever I argue with a progressive, the first thing I do, you know, there's so many reasonable, rational things that you can present in a counter-argument, but that's not what I do at all. I go to, what part of this thing is he saying that makes him smarter than me and better than me?
Right.
And then I just go right after it. You know, so there's a racist, you're the ones whose policies have destroyed black America. You're the ones who have had a vote plantation more pernicious than the entire slavery plantation system in the South. The Democratic Party left the Union to become the Confederacy. You don't get to stand there above me and tell me what a racist I am when it's your policies that are destroying these people's lives. It's you who are telling them they have to think the way their skin is colored,
Right.
and not me. And when you hit them in that unearned moral superiority, that virtue signaling, they just crumple like a little...
No, I
like a little
agree.
wet dog.
I totally agree. They can't handle that.
You know, one of the things that I often say is that it's important to listen to the other side. Not that you're gonna
You need
go
to know
to
what
the other
they're
side,
saying.
but you need to know what they're saying. And oftentimes, well, maybe not oftentimes, but every now and then, you might come away with a piece of information that teaches you something. I can't remember. I was one of you two that we talked about this on my show. So when I was in college, Gloria Steinem came to speak at my school. Huge feminist, the complete opposite side. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go listen to this woman speak. Her entire speech was useless to me, except one line. She said there are no mistakes in advertising. And I'll never forget that line.
It wasn't even hers. But,
Was it?
you know.
All right. Well, so she jacked the line. But anyway, I walked away and I learned something. And so I go listen to the other side. Liberals here do not listen. They do not. They can't keep their mouths shut to just, hey, let's be respectful. Let's listen, see what they have to say without throwing rocks at them.
And if they have a compelling case that's backed up by fact and argument, I will change my mind. I would rather be right than consistent.
Yeah.
You know, if it turns out that I'm wrong about something and somebody has a compelling argument, I will move. And that is the essence of intellectual integrity.
And that gets down to some of these individuals are more concerned about winning an argument than they are about being correct on principle. And that's what's unfortunate.
Yes.
All right, so Sheriff Clark came over and paid us a visit.
He did.
Talk about a great patriot and a guy for freedom. He is on a panel right now, so I want to go in and dip into that panel because anything this guy says is fascinating to hear. So let's do that. Sheriff Clark of Milwaukee County on a panel right now.
To go to vote for president or for the Congress. And so 6 and 10 say they're very important. So that's why we're here today. And I am honored that we're going to start with Sheriff Clark. We're going to start in reverence for social media that gives us the power beyond the propaganda media to find the truth. And so in order of who has the most Twitter followers, guess who we're starting with? So Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark is... He is a rock star. So he has 557,000 followers on Twitter. And so I hope all of you are following. And if you're not, you need to follow him at Sheriff Clark with an E on the end. So just make a note of that. That's your first homework. And besides our president, I have to say, I think he's the most authentic and influential voice in our culture and in our politics. He has, amen. He's been in law enforcement for some 39 years, and 5 years ago he was given an award by the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association for demonstrating true leadership and courage, staying true to his oath, true to his badge, and true to the people he has promised to serve and protect. Today he's going to talk about sanctuary cities and how sanctuary cities is an affront to our national sovereignty and keeping Americans safe. Please join me in welcoming Sheriff Clark.
Thank you very much. I mean, come on now, how cool is this? Right? Be here at CPAC with like-minded individuals that believe in this country, believe in the rule of law, believe in our Constitution, and staying anchored to it. I'd be remiss if I didn't take one brief moment to remind all of you that something you already know, Blue Lives Matter in America. Because we are on the front lines of protecting and enforcing the rule of law. And I want to talk about sanctuary cities briefly here. President Donald Trump has made it very clear that it is high time, it is past time in America that we start aggressively enforcing the rule of law once again in America. Now, recently, the issue of sanctuary cities has dominated the news. You all know what that term means, sanctuary cities, providing safe haven for people who have illegally crossed our borders, come into our country outside of the rules that Congress has set up for immigration. As many of you know, under the Constitution, Article 1, Clause 8, Section 4, I believe it says Congress has the authority to establish rules on naturalization. And the president's job, as you know, is to carry out the rules, the laws that Congress sets forth. So nothing that President Donald Trump is talking about, nothing is not already codified under existing law. If we need immigration reform, that's for the Congress to take out. But until then, the president took an oath. I was there, here, across the Potomac in Washington, D.C., and saw him take that oath. And he said he would support the Constitution of the United States and enforce all of the laws, and that's what he's doing here. Now, a couple days ago, President Trump and Secretary Kelly at the Department of Homeland Security issued some new rules regarding the enforcement of immigration, and it employs the help of local law enforcement. Now, many of you know the federal government cannot make states enforce federal law, but they still have to comply with it. Sanctuary cities are havens for criminal activity. Sanctuary cities provide cover, if you will, for criminal illegal aliens to continue to prey on not only law-abiding people, but also illegal immigrants in this country. And here's why they're able to do that with impunity. Because if you were a criminal illegal alien and you rape, rob, whatever, another illegal alien in the country, it's less likely that they're going to report that because they don't want to be discovered to be in the country themselves. So we have a lot of underreporting and unreported serious crimes in America because of sanctuary cities. Now, you'll hear a lot of stuff, right? I mean, in this whole environment we're in, myths, propaganda, whatnot, as it relates to illegal immigration, because that's what we're talking about. But Donald Trump has made it clear as well. President Donald Trump has made it clear that's where he's going to start, the deportation of criminal illegal aliens, individuals who've been convicted of some very serious crimes here in the United States and then allowed back out onto the streets to re-victimize people once again. It's a catch and release policy. President Trump has said those days are over. And I've made it clear that in helping President Trump get his arms around this serious problem of illegal immigration, that I was going to use the resources that I have as a sheriff of Milwaukee County to help him accomplish that. All right, I have a duty to do that. I have a duty to protect the citizens of Milwaukee County because American citizens come first. All right? So here's how we can end this notion of sanctuary cities. But we got to demonstrate that we have the will to do this. When I say we, I'm talking about Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the White House, and others, and Congress. Here's how we can do it. Remember I said this is already codified in existing law. And I'm going to quickly read that and that's where I'm going to end. Here's how I would end sanctuary cities. There is a criminal federal statute to violate this law. I'm going to quickly read it. It's real, and it's easy to understand. It says, and I wrote this in thehill.com for those of you who want to go and read the whole article, but it says, I would start with USC 1324, which in part contains criminal sanctions for any person who, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come into, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, attempts to conceal, which is what sanctuary cities are, attempts to conceal, harbor, or shields from detection, that's what sanctuary cities do, such alien in any place, including any building or subsection, encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States. That's what our universities, some of them are doing. Knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that such coming to, entry, or residence is in violation of the law, or engages in any conspiracy to commit any of the preceding acts, aids or abets the commission of any of these preceding acts, shall be fined and imprisoned for up to 5 to 10 years. I'm telling you right now, folks, you charge one mayor, one governor, one council president that adopts these laws, this stuff is going to end right away. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Our next speaker will be the person with the next most Twitter followers. It's Trevor Loudon. Trevor Loudon is on Twitter. You all should follow him at the @ New Zeal blog. That's how you find Trevor Loudon, New Zeal blog. And he is from New Zealand, and so he has the cool accent. He has a cool movie out, Enemies Within, and you should all try to find that. And we are pleased that he's with us. He has a unique perspective on keeping America free. And he has been affiliating now, most recently, with Capital Research Center, who has a series of documentaries called America Under Siege, Civil War 2017. Their first piece was on the inauguration and all the paid protesters and domestic subversives that were part of bringing our country down and bringing President Trump to be delegitimized before he even took office. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Trevor Loudon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? Can you understand the southern accent? Okay. Look, I have a perspective. America,
all right, folks, so we are getting ready for Senator Ted Cruz to join us here. It's a great honor to have him. There he is as he makes his way to the chair here on the NRATV. Hey, Senator, how are you?
Good to see you.
Senator, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
So, Senator, I was saying, this is your base. You won the straw poll here last year. This is your crowd, isn't it?
Well, CPAC is fantastic. It's always fantastic. But like I say, the energy here this time is special. And I think the reason is people are excited at the chance to actually accomplish what we've been talking about for years and decades. And that doesn't happen very often. I think there's a ton of excitement here at this gathering.
Senator, this is a time in history where we really can move the ball forward, and we need to do it in swift order because the future is always uncertain.
Yes.
How do you get your fellow senators to get on board with this process and start pushing that ball down the field?
Well, there's no doubt that we need to appreciate a sense of urgency. I can tell you I and a number of other senators have been pressing, let's work long hours, let's stay over the weekend, let's stay, particularly in the face of Democratic obstruction. You know, the Democrats are filibustering everything, and we need to demonstrate resolve that we will break that filibuster, and we're rolling up our sleeves and going to work for the American people. One of the things I shared with President Trump the week after the election, I said, look, if history's any guide, 80% of what gets done in your first term will be done in the first 2 years.
That's right.
And at least half of that will be done in the first 100 days.
Absolutely.
I didn't even see you, Bill.
How you doing, stranger?
You were sitting there quietly. And
I'm a wallflower.
That's the term that describes you.
No, you were great in there, Ted. You were just terrific. And I think the thing that I thought was most powerful was when you were talking about the Ninth Circuit Court decision and the Fourth, how they're utterly lawless. There's no precedent, no statute cited. This is the problem, isn't it? The Supreme Court and the circuit courts simply make laws. They just mandate them into existence.
Well, they're not even pretending anymore.
Yeah,
and you know, it's interesting watching some of the media folks that are clutching their pearls at anyone criticizing a judge. Well, you know what? If a judge is actually doing the judicial function, is following and applying the law, right, that's one thing. But these guys are not pretending to do the judicial function. They're simply acting as legislatures, and they're acting as far left, whacked out legislatures. That is not deserving of any respect. And if you're going to behave like a legislator, then you should be accountable to the people.
We've been talking that it certainly is an opportunity for Donald Trump to appoint some more conservative judges across the country.
Yes.
But it's no sure thing. He's got to get through liberal senators. You've got the way they pick judges in certain states. This could be something we deal with for a very long time.
You know, it could be, but it's actually much more of a sure thing now. It's one of the things I said in there, toasting Harry Reid. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek.
Absolutely right.
But not much.
No,
because
100%.
We can now confirm judges with 51 votes.
Right.
And there are over 100 vacancies on the federal courts right now. And what I have urged the president, I think we should fill those seats with young, principled constitutionalists, 30-something and 40-something.
Absolutely.
An entire roster of stars, the next generations of Scalias and Thomases.
And they're locked in, and that's it.
Healthy and long living.
There you go.
So when you talk about gun rights in America today and the Supreme Court being the last line of defense,
yes,
what do you say about the filibuster and throwing out the 60-vote rule?
Well, what I say is this. Judge Gorsuch is going to be confirmed. I do not believe the Democrats will be successful in filibustering him. They may try, but if they try, they will fail. And it will be whatever procedural means is necessary He will be confirmed. And the Democrats need to understand this. And this confirmation has a particular weight because, as you know, the vacancy, Justice Scalia died just over a year ago. And the vacancy occurred during a presidential election year. The Senate had not filled a vacancy on the Supreme Court that occurred during an election year for 80 years. And the Republican majority made the right decision, in my view, to say we are not going to fill this vacancy during the election year. We're going to let the people decide. And under the Constitution, the Senate has the power of advise and consent. We advise the president. This election is for the people to decide. And I'll tell you, when it came to the court, no issue mattered more for voters than the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. Justice Scalia's seminal opinion, the most important opinion that he wrote during his entire tenure on the court, was the Heller decision. The Heller decision upholding the individual right to keep and bear arms, and the contrast between Donald Trump, who pledged to appoint justices that would protect the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment, and Hillary Clinton, who explicitly promised to appoint justices who would overturn Heller and take away our Second Amendment. The people decided, and this election was a mandate for protecting the Constitution.
Yeah, it absolutely is. We only have a couple seconds left, but I did want to ask you, national reciprocity is such a big issue for the NRA, our members.
Yep.
How good is the chance of getting that through?
Well, look, I think we need to tee it up. We need to vote on it. I am an enthusiastic supporter. And we need to put Democrats on record. It is going to be a challenge because Democrats are filibustering everything. And so the dynamic we're going to face, we need to first of all make them vote on it. And my assumption is most, if not every Democrat will oppose it, even some of the Democrats who pretend to be good on guns. The reality is this Democratic Party is the party of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Their base has gone nuts.
No more blue dogs.
No, it's they pretend. They pretend on election season. These red state Democrats pretend very briefly, but they're terrified of their base right now. So I think we should bring up national reciprocity, make every one of them vote on record, get them on record, and then beyond that, we ought to look for vehicles for getting it passed in overcoming a Democratic filibuster, but it's going to take Republicans stiffening our spines and being willing to stand up and fight.
You better believe it. Well, Senator, thank you so much for being a great voice of conservatism. Thank you. Hey, you're my senator in Texas. Thank you, sir.
You're my senator in Los Angeles.
You're the senator of America. I'll just put it like that. There you go.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you. That is Senator Ted Cruz. Great to have him on set as NRATV continues here. And, it just goes to show you that this conference is so important that we have leaders coming here, leaders like Ted Cruz. We had Senator Jim DeMint come on. They need to talk to these folks because these folks, you talk about power brokers in Washington, they're not the suit and ties. The power brokers in Washington are all the people out there listening to these speeches every day. Right. Those are the real power brokers. It's the people.
You know what I thought, not to interrupt here, but one of the things that he said that we've touched on before, you and I have talked about, you've talked about it before as well, is this, and this fascinates me, the blue dog thing. Because look, all of these Democrats in red states and purple states. Think about all of the Democrats that are in states that Trump won by like double digits. Pennsylvania. I look at Missouri. Claire McCaskill used to be a powerhouse in Missouri. She's actually, I think, in order to save her own backside, she's going to have to trend in the middle. I see her as being someone that would have to support something like national reciprocity to keep her seat.
Yeah. But the DNC, there's a Sarah Hoyt wrote something, and she said that when you get a liberal in trouble, they roll left and die. They get more left wing, and that certainly seems to be what they're planning on doing. We can just, please give us Keith Ellison, and please run.
Well, we talk about the movers and shakers as we got Ted Cruz taking selfies right behind Bill and Dana, which is a terrific shot there. And then not 2 feet away, we have a great conservative, Governor Sam Brownback of Kansas. Governor, it is great to have you on set with us today.
Hey, it's great to join you. And what an exciting atmosphere and a lot of energy around it. I mean, the left has got their set-up protest, but we've got a lot of energy and we got better ideas.
Yeah, you better believe it. Hey, I watched the panel you were on with Scott Walker.
Yeah, wasn't that fun?
Boy, I'll tell you what, it really was an informative.
Yeah, well, and you've got 4 states that are going through various kind of phases and places of conservative action. Kentucky hasn't had a Republican legislature ever, or at least not in the last 100 years, and now they're moving things like right to work forward, and you're seeing that. We've done a lot of conservative movement of things in Kansas, whether it's on the economic front or on the social front. And so you can kind of share those ideas and see best practices of how you move the ideas forward, because we know what the ideas are, we know the principles of it. How you get it done then becomes a difficult issue, which is what they're confronting here in Washington.
You know, when you come to Washington and you have the liberal media here that's just running rampant, I don't even know if you named Kansas that they even know where it is.
Oh, they do, because they're trying to badmouth us and say, okay, your tax cuts aren't working. Yeah, you lowered your income taxes and you took it off a small business, but it doesn't work. You're having a budget problem. I said, no, we got great growth of small business. So they know where we are because they try to discredit the ideas.
My home state's Missouri, and you were taken, rightfully so, a lot of our jobs and a lot of our industry because you're doing some good things in Kansas.
But now you've got a good governor, new governor in there, Governor Greitens. Wow.
Right
I mean, he just passed right to work, and I think Missouri is going to start humming. Moving on forward. John Ashcroft's an old buddy of mine from Missouri, and I love the guy. He's fantastic. And he was saying, hey, you guys are really beating us here. But then in our home states, because the media is so liberal, they just hammer at all this stuff, and they just say, oh, it's terrible, and this and that. When you're going, no, look at the overall numbers. We've got to grow. The key is really growth. Texas has shown that in such a powerful way. That's what Trump, I think, has got to do here more than anything, is get that growth rate up to 3% at least for the GDP. That's the big one, really.
When you look at what's happened in Texas with that growth, and it's a big giant snowball that happens, because then you got people flocking, especially young people. There is nothing better for a state than to have young people moving.
Yes, that's the key to it. And if you don't grow, then you're going to be declining. You're going to lose population. You're going to lose that dynamism. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to do in our states, and then that's what's got to take place here.
Can I ask you, on a state level in Kansas, clearly the people of Kansas, like most of, as you say, flyover nation, love their guns, take the Second Amendment very, very seriously. Are there any threats now in Kansas from the left, the likes of some of these Bloomberg groups coming into Kansas and trying to mess with those rights?
There are. And there was a hearing in the state legislature in a committee 2 weeks ago, but the bill didn't pass in the committee. And Kansas, during the time I've been in office, has gone, I think, from the 8th most Second Amendment-friendly state to the 2nd. Because a number of people, we passed constitutional carry, which it always seems kind of odd to me that why do you have to pass a law to say about your constitutional right?
Exactly.
But we did, and you have to. And people are very serious about this because, look, this is my right. This is in the Constitution, and it says it's here.
You shouldn't have to reaffirm it again at the state level and just do redundancy after redundancy. It's sad.
But you have to.
Yeah, and again, I think this is where you really need to take this to the top level and ask American citizens, do you suspect that you would have to give up your First Amendment rights when you entered
That's
the
what
state
I
of
always
Maryland?
ask.
Or your fifth.
Yeah, that's why I always argue with people. I said, you can. Why do you want to interpret the First Amendment broadly and the Second Amendment narrowly?
Right.
And what's fair about that? Either interpret both of them broadly or both of them narrowly. And I believe in individual liberties, you should define these broadly. These are your individual rights, and they should be protected broadly, not narrowly.
I was watching the four of you on the stage in the panel, and first thought I had was we've got really good bench depth in the Republican Party. No, seriously,
we do.
We really do. But the thing that impressed me the most, Governor, was listening to the four of you talk about the differing approaches to education.
Yes.
And I was watching this and said, this is what federalism is supposed to be.
Yes.
We're going to try it one way. We're going to try it another way. That works. We'll take this, as opposed to this Common Core state-sponsored stupid, which is a single point of failure kind of a lecture system. I was so impressed with not just your education proposals, but the way that you were interacting with the other three governors. And I thought, this is the party of the future. This is the party that actually is thinking about
and that's what we do. I mean, we're always kind of watching each other, looking out of the side of the eye. Well, how did he handle welfare reform? How did he get that done? Well, what problems did he run in on tax reform? Well, what about on education? How did he get that piece done? We just put forward a bill in the state of Kansas, or proposal, to have a $15,000 college degree. $15,000 to get this college degree, and everybody's going, oh, really? Can you do that? Well, there's a couple other states that have already done it for $10,000. And we tried, well, how'd you do that? Well, okay, yeah, well, you can do that. And you need to make college affordable. It turns out you can.
With competition.
With competition.
Because an MRI will charge the insurance company, will charge you $7,000. There are imaging centers, you get an MRI, you walk in paying $300 in cash. $300. Not $7,000, not $9,000, $300 in cash, and off you go.
It's competition and information. I mean, you need to know, okay, how do I compare these things? And then you need to compete. And that's what we need at K-12 level in education as well, which is what we're really missing. Yeah, higher education, we're best in the world. K-12, kind of middle of the pack in the industrialized world. And how did you figure this one out and not that one? Okay, competition.
Governor, there was talk of the need of a 4-year degree isn't right for everybody.
That's
and
absolutely
the federal
true.
government has thrown money at higher education, which is why we've seen the cost of tuition soar. When
It's
the
a
federal
cycle.
government's given money, they're going to raise their prices. It absolutely is a cycle. Are you doing anything in Kansas to bring back vocational training to high schools?
One of the best things that we have done, it's called Senate Bill 155. We said while you're in high school, you can take any technical education in the state of Kansas, and the state will pay for it, just like they pay for the schooling. And so if you want to go get a CNA, a welding certification, an IT certification while you're in high school, we've seen triple the enrollment now.
And where are you getting the money to pay for it?
It wasn't that expensive. It was like $12 million. I mean, that's a lot of money, but if you're looking at the overall educational establishment, and on top of that, now I've got people that are technically trained that are making above minimum wage and paying payroll taxes at a higher level. This thing has been fantastic, and the parents are really pushing their kids to do it and saying, if you're not ready to go to college, get the technical certification so you can make $15-20 an hour. If you're a diesel mechanic, a lot more than that.
Those jobs
And
are
then
needed.
they're
We don't
needed.
have enough people to fill them.
And it's not just above minimum wage. A good welder makes more money than most people with
yeah.
college degrees in fields of
absolutely.
literature, English, or so on.
This thing has really exploded, and we need to do a lot more of it. And we need to have K-12 at the last several years of high school. You need to be able to start branching from there and saying, okay, I want to take all my general education courses for college while I'm a junior, senior in high school, or I want to get my technical certification, or I want to get my technical certification in CNA and start.
Right.
Yeah.
And you
Choices.
can do that
Yeah.
now if you just get the system to open up and have the choices.
Well, Governor, keep up the fight there in Kansas. We appreciate you sharing some time with us today.
Happy to
It's
do
a
it.
pleasure to meet you, sir.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Nice to see you,
Keep
Governor.
talking.
All right, we're going to. You better believe it right here on NRATV. That is Governor Sam Brownback of Kansas, and really a voice of conservatism. The four guys on the panel were really all voices of conservatism, and what they're doing in their states is really pretty amazing.
I loved what he said about, not to cut you, but about the vocational.
Absolutely. And you know what struck me about all four of those governors were they just seem like regular guys. They seem like guys who had dealt with these problems in the real world. Now they're trying to deal with it in their state houses.
Right.
They're not these civil rights lawyers or something who've never figured out how to man a fry station or anything. And these guys look like they know how to make things work.
There's this, and I know you guys have seen this, there is this prejudice against blue-collar work.
Of course.
When you
Absolutely
mentioned
is.
how much welders make, I mean, I have a couple of family members who they said, you know what, I kind of want to go to trade school and I want to learn a skilled trade and I want to go out and they are making more money than their contemporaries who went to college, got into all of this debt to get some degree that they're not even using and going and getting some office job. I mean, not everybody's cut out for that.
And what you said about the college debt is really interesting because we think, okay, it's a debt that these kids have to carry, but what nobody's talking about is used to be if you graduated college with either no debt or a couple $1,000s in debt,
Right.
and you wanted to get out of college and start a business, you could get the loan because you basically didn't have any debt. But when you come out of
You have that much
college,
debt, you can't do
how
that.
are you going to start a new business when you're already $250,000 underwater?
It is clear college is not right for
No.
everyone. I own a small trucking company, but I employ 18-wheeler drivers, and they can make $65,000, $70,000 a year driving a truck. And really, out on the road, you're your own boss.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'll never forget, I was interviewing a black gentleman who was probably my age, 48. We were in my car, and a guy called up, one of the guys that was working on my car, and a real Texas-style guy. We got to get Obama out. And he's on speakerphone. We got to get Obama out of the office. And I'm thinking, oh, my Lord,
I love it.
what is he going to say? And I said, all right, I got to go. I'll talk to you later. Yeah, the car's fixed. And I look at, and I'm going to give his name, Calvin Lucky. He's one of my best drivers that I got. I looked at Calvin, and I said, I host a radio show and NRATV, and people want to talk to me about this stuff all the time. He says to me, I'm voting for Trump. And I said, you are? I said, tell me why. He says, 8 years and ain't nothing changed.
Yeah,
He says, I'm driving a truck for 8 years. They're giving cell phones out to people. They're giving people money in the mail. He says, I'm working as hard as I can ever work. Ain't nothing changed. Barack Obama forgot about the middle class. I'm voting for Trump.
Right.
And that was the moment I thought,
We got a chance.
we got a shot.
You know who's really leading this, not only a pathfinder, but kind of carrying the torch is Mike Rowe, Mike-
Yes, I love Mike Rowe.
Everybody likes Mo. He's
And he's
the
got the best voice
He's
ever.
the most American guy that has been born in 100 years. He just looks and sounds like an American.
He needs to record every word in the alphabet and every letter
make our
before he
sentences.
passes away,
He
so
does.
his voice can live forever.
I had a chance to talk to him, and he did Dirty Jobs on, was it Discovery, I guess?
Yep.
But first he did Most Dangerous Catch. And he said, no one is speaking for the people that make our lives, forget comfortable, bearable. No one's talking about the people that take the sewer jobs.
Right.
No one's talking about the engineers that keep the bridges going or the water flowing. And he, almost by himself, has been tremendous about that. John Ratzenberger, too, said, if we wanted to build the Golden Gate Bridge today, we couldn't do it. We couldn't build it.
That's
We
a
don't
great
know
point.
how.
Right.
That's a great point.
All right, so we talk about interviewing cool people here, and people that are often underestimated and underappreciated, and that's members of our military. National security, a huge issue. So we ran into the commander of the USS Cole
It's tremendous.
here. How cool is that, right? And they all know, basically in Yemen, victims of a terrorist attack. So I got a chance to interview the commander, Leipold, and I want you to take a look at this. It's pretty cool. One of the great things about coming to CPAC is the people you get to meet here and the number of people from different walks of life and industries. And many of the things that people are talking about here is national security. There is nothing more important than building back up our military. And we ran across a great patriot, Commander Kirk Leipold. Commander, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, Grant.
And so you were the commander on the USS Cole, a victim of a terrorist attack. Why don't you run me through just what that was like?
Well, we'd pulled into a little port called Aden, Yemen for a brief stop for fuel. We expected to be there 6 to 8 hours. We'd been pumping fuel on board for about 45 minutes, and we had contracted for 3 garbage barges to come out. 2 had come out, 2 had left. Third one that came out, masqueraded as a garbage barge, came alongside the ship, which is why it didn't raise any alarm bells as far as security. And at 11:18 in the morning, it was a thunderous explosion. It literally blew the ship and lifted it about 8 to 10 feet out of the water. We slid back in, power failed, lights went out, and the crew, thankfully through their training, every system that could have told them what to do had failed. So they fell back on their training and did exactly what they were trained to do. They saved their ship, saved their shipmates, and they were either doing damage control to save the ship, triage to save their shipmates, or security to stop another attack.
What was the casualties there?
Ultimately and unfortunately, we would have 17 sailors killed and 37 wounded.
Clearly, it was a touchy place to be, to say the least. What was your reaction when you heard the boom? Did you know exactly what it was at the time?
We did not. I think like everyone else on the ship, I thought it was a fuel explosion. And within seconds, though, we had been moored right side to the pier and had been thrust up and to the right. If anything, being next to a pier, I should have been shoved left by a fuel explosion. So I immediately knew something had come alongside from the harbor side, and that's when I immediately knew we'd been attacked. I went back into my cabin, unlocked the safe, pulled out a SIG 229, loaded it, chambered around, decocked it, took a deep breath, and said, well, this might be your destiny, but when you head out, 2 things. Just, A, if you see someone that doesn't belong, make them duck first and don't leave an empty round in the chamber.
Yeah, when you think about what happened that day, you have 2 concerns now. Well, maybe 3. You've got your men on the ship, men and women on the ship. You've got to figure out the ship doesn't sink, and how do you prevent that from happening? And you also have to defend yourself. Are you worried at this point, once you realize it's a terrorist attack, that more is coming?
Absolutely, and that's why we initially would establish communications with the Yemeni Port Authority to ensure that at that point, any boat that came out to us, whether it was to render aid or otherwise, would be identified. We'd know where it was come. We'd know how many people were on it. We'd have communications with them so that we could absolute certainty identify them and make sure that they came alongside to help, especially initially with the evacuation of wounded.
So what ends up happening as time goes by? You figure out what's happening. What is the ship doing?
The number one thing we did was get the ship stable. That was our number one priority, because if you don't save the ship, everything else kind of becomes irrelevant at that point. So the ship was stable in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. The evacuation of the wounded was occurring concurrently with that. We would evacuate 33 wounded off the ship that first day in 99 minutes, and it's a testament to how well the crew is trained with medical life-saving techniques. Of those 33, 32 would survive.
It's an amazing story, really. When you look at what happened to the USS Cole, and when we're talking with Kirk Leipold, who was the commander of the ship there, does Annapolis use it as a case study?
They do. The midshipmen use it both as a case study for force protection, but also, more importantly, as a leadership case study so they can understand what it really means to have that foundation of integrity, to have the kind of honor and character that they need to develop as young men and women that are going to go out and defend our nation. Because when they get put into a trial like that, when something like that happens, everything in your life melts away and becomes irrelevant. And like for me, it was, what do I have to do to save my ship? What do I have to do to save my crew? Nothing else mattered.
So here's the toughest question. When you look back at it, do you say, boy, I wish I would have done X?
In reality, Grant, I'll be honest with you, I never answered that question. I was put in those circumstances that day. I made the best decisions based upon the information I had. I can't change what happened. And so rather than playing the what-if game for the rest of my life, I say, look, I made the best decisions I could. I was the one accountable officer that day, and I'll live with the consequences of what happened for the rest of my life.
So now the goal's got to be, and clearly as a Navy man, to make sure it doesn't happen to another ship. Now, we have a Navy that has been depleted, certainly, in many very dangerous parts of the world. Yemen, you were there really before the ultimate downfall of Yemen. Had you noticed the start of problems in Yemen?
Well, it wasn't just in Yemen. I had noticed that we had a fault throughout the government in that we were not recognizing the threat of terrorism. If you look back, you had the Beirut barracks bombing in 1983. You had the attack on the World Trade Center 1 in 93, Khobar Towers 96, the embassies in 98. And when you look at those are attacks on buildings that house and represent U.S. interests. The attack on USS Cole was fundamentally different because a warship defends our nation and its interests. When you try to take away a nation's ability to defend itself, it's an act of war. We missed it, and 11 months after the attack on Cole, with no response from either the Clinton or Bush administrations, we paid a price that unfortunately we're still paying today.
Yeah, and now when you look at the military and the levels it has gone to, I've heard that we are on the verge of becoming a regional power and no longer a superpower when it comes to our Navy. How concerned are you?
I'm very concerned. I think that when you look at it, the United States has always been at the tip of the spear in the vanguard of freedom throughout the world. Part of doing that is having a Navy that can safeguard the sea lanes of communication so that you can have free trade, so that you can safeguard not only our economy but other economies throughout the world. You don't need to have the bottlenecks that are being created in the Strait of Hormuz by Iran, in the South China Sea by China. Those are the kind of things that actually threaten commerce. Having a Navy now of less than 275 ships, we absolutely need to invest not only in maintaining, but more importantly, figuring out how to build the Navy of the future, because we're not like the Army and the Air Force where I can put troops in the back of an airplane or bombs in a bomb bay. Navy ships have to be in the numbers, maintained and forward deployed so that you have presence. All you have to do is ask Captain Phillips from the Maersk, Alabama, how important it was to have the USS Bainbridge on station within a few hours to be able to come rescue him. That's why you have a forward deployed Navy.
Yeah, and so hopefully Donald Trump gets back to that business. I always like playing this game. So you were the commander of the USS Cole, well versed in naval issues, war issues. If I was the President of the United States today, and I called you into the Oval Office, and I said, what are we going to do as far as the Navy goes, with North Korea firing ballistic missiles, with what China is doing in the South China Sea, and everything going on in that region, what would you tell me?
The number one thing I would tell you is that we develop a strategy to confront each of these nations. And unlike the previous president, you don't bluff. When you draw a red line and say, if you do this, there will be consequences, you follow through on it. We lost so much credibility by drawing a red line with chemical weapons in Syria and then not following through. We lost it regionally and we lost it globally, because if we're willing to give up on that, even our allies have every right to question, are they going to be there for us now if they're not willing to follow through on something that important?
If there was one place where we should have an aircraft carrier strike fleet in place that we don't right now, where would it be?
I would say we need to keep one in the Middle East full time. Right now it's gapped. We don't have an aircraft carrier battle group there. Iran is continuing to stir trouble.
All right. I appreciate it. Commander Kirk Leipold, it is a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much, sir,
Well,
and thank you for your
absolutely.
service.
And the one thing I also want to say is don't forget, as an NRA benefactor life member, it is proud to be part of the NRA, and thank you for having me on today.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you, folks. I'm Grant Stinchfield. There you go. I am Grant Stinchfield. That's me.
You're
right
Grant
there.
Stinchfield, and I'm not.
Hey, I will tell you what, that is a cool interview. That guy, you got a chance to talk to him.
I did.
Can you imagine what he was going through at the time the USS Cole is being blown up and he's commanding that boat?
You know, I really don't want to put too much of a point on this, but I'm going to anyway. The guy's an NRA member, so he is always thinking on some level about what happens if things go south, and I don't think people really appreciate the size of that blast, because they put so much explosives on that boat. There was no way that a missile could have carried anything like that kind of explosive. Yeah. Harpoon missiles, Exocet missiles, they got nothing like that kind of explosive power. He said it lifted the entire ship 8 or 10 feet out of the water, back down again, and because his crew responded so well, they were able to save the ship. I said, you saved your ship. He said, I didn't save my ship, the crew did.
And if you notice one point in the interview, and we want to welcome Cam Edwards to the show
Yeah.
as well.
How are you,
Cam,
fellas?
it's great to have you, man. It's great to see you here, and welcome to the program.
Absolutely, you're rocking and rolling today.
So, did you notice in that interview with the commander there, he said once he realized it was not a fuel explosion, he went straight to his locker, his locked locker, and got his firearm.
Yep.
And that was the first thing he did, and then started commanding the response.
Yeah, it'd be kind of embarrassing if the captain's not able to save his ship because some terrorist is climbing up a gangway and he's on a U.S. warship and he can't defend himself.
Yeah, and at that point, it speaks to the training that you receive in the military, but also the training that we as gun owners, want to have ourselves, that there's that second nature response. It's not that he was thinking, okay, where's my gun? I got to go get my gun, right? He knew exactly where to go. He knew exactly what to do because he had been training for those types of moments.
And we rehearse it. I mean, we rehearse it mentally. The two safest places I ever feel in my life is on a gun range and at an airport. I'm a pilot. Same thing. Serious about safety and this constant sense of what happens if things go south now? Where am I going to go if things go south right now? And when you get used to thinking like that, you can be very, very fast in a tough spot.
He talked about the crew where everything was still continuing to go wrong and they had to go to plan B, C, D,
Flexibility.
E. Flexibility.
Yeah.
And he also showed a photo of the Cole. When it first happened, you only saw just a little bit of the hole above the water. Mm-hmm. Once the boat was lifted out of the water, the hole was
drive a truck
gigantic.
through it.
You could have driven an 18-wheeler truck through
It was a big hole in a little boat. 555 feet, I think, for Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer. And I got a chance to talk to him afterwards. The modern torpedoes don't hit the side of the ship and blow a hole in it. They're designed to go underneath the ship, explode under the ship, and then that basically breaks the back of the ship. And it goes right into the air cavity. And I said, you guys must have gotten some pretty good test information on how rugged these destroyers are, because most torpedoes wouldn't have had that kind of power.
Amazing. Well, I guess since we're in the mode of talking about the military, I had a chance to talk to two veterans, one a Marine, one an Air Force vet. They're cousins, and they live in Cincinnati. Clearly, Ohio is a very important state for all of us. And so they're here because they are huge NRA supporters. They are here huge Second Amendment supporters and conservatives. So I got a chance to talk to them. And these are the everyday people. We had the governor on. We had Ted Cruz on. These are the kinds of people that come to CPAC that really are the ones that you want to hear from. So let's roll that. All right, we are on the floor at CPAC. It's an exciting day here. We have so many people coming in to see the events today. I'm here with Brian and Carrie Smith, cousins, members of the military. Thank you guys for that.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
So we got Air Force and Marines.
Marine Corps, yes.
Okay, awesome. So let me ask you, Brian, what had you come out? I know you guys are from Cincinnati. What had you come down to?
Well, the biggest thing is I've never been here before, and I've always been told that you've got to see it. You've got to see it at least once. And we do our own little thing outside. We wanted to get the inside of what was really going on here at CPAC.
And how about you?
Same thing. I mean, we do a radio show together, and we wanted to get more networked, and I asked around to some people, and they said, you should check it out. There's a lot of people to meet here, and so here we are.
All right, so national security, obviously a huge deal for all of us. As members of the military, how excited are you that we now have Donald Trump as Commander-in-Chief and Barack Obama out?
I've never seen a president that I can remember that was so serious about supporting military veterans, about supporting the military, and really serious about the border control. I mean, go back to Reagan. Reagan was sold a bill of goods that they were going to build the wall if he passed, amnesty, and it never happened. So this time, Trump we're building the wall.
Do you have friends still in the military?
I do, absolutely.
What do they say now about the prospect of the Trump presidency over Biden?
We can see the shift change in person where people feel that they're being more supportive than they have been in the past for years.
It had to be hard to be out on the field and know that I really believe that Barack Obama did not have the military's back. I believe that he did not have America's best interest in heart. In fact, I think he did things to actively go out there and harm America. When you look at trading for Bo Bergdahl, when you look at the Iran nuclear deal, and so many other things, when you put it all together, you have to wonder, was he doing this on purpose? And that is a very, very difficult thing to say about a president of the United States.
We can only just hope that it was more incompetence than actual malicious intent, because we're talking about a president of the United States that was duly elected by the people back in 2008 and then in 2012. And it's really disgusting. The Bo Bergdahl situation really was disgusting to me, and a lot of military veterans that I'm friends with concurred with that. And it's I'm totally excited about our new president, because it does seem like, based on everything that he said from day one all the way until today, that he's going to support us. The VA thing really was disgusting during the Barack Obama administration, and I really am hoping that Donald Trump really fixes that.
When you take the totality of all of it, and you think veterans, the one guys we need to take care of, you guys, put your lives on the line for us, and to think that they're hung out to dry.
Yes. Oh, I'm telling you, it's very emotional. It gets to us personally, because we were out there and we were taught, you got to watch out for your fellow soldiers and Marines, and it feels like you're right. We've been left out to dry, and I feel like we have somebody in the trenches now in the White House, and it really feels good.
When Trump says America first, that's what resonated with me, and that's what resonated with my friends, is that we now finally have somebody that's fighting for us, the voice of the people. And the media doesn't get it because they don't believe it and they don't understand it. But when he says what he says he's going to do it, and he does it. And that's not a politician, and that's why he got elected.
And he says he's going to build up the military, and nothing could be more important when you look at North Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles. You look at what China is doing in the South China Sea. We have a Navy now that has been depleted to lower levels than we've seen in modern history. And it goes beyond that, and you guys can talk about this. The equipment the men have in the field, it's become a disgrace.
Yeah, if you don't have the right tools for the job doesn't get done. You've got to know that you've got the backing of the president, commander-in-chief. You've got to know that it's there. The confidence levels that are high, the job gets done right. It's just a whole nother mindset.
Do you have guys, Kerry, as a Marine, there are guys out there, are they equipped to do the job? Because sometimes I wonder, not just with rules of engagement, their hands are tied behind their backs.
Well, it's been quite a few years since I've been in the field, so there's been time for that to have been built up at this point. But the reporting that we've seen from years ago, there's a lot of equipment that was not really set up for the missions that they were doing. And if there's one thing I can tell you, that we know that we have a very pragmatic leader as president now, and if there's something that is not in the field that's very badly needed, Donald Trump's going to be the one that is going to make it happen, for sure.
So we're talking with Kerry and Brian Smith, both veterans, Kerry in the Marines and Brian in the Air Force. When you talk about rules of engagement, I got a big harumph from you. I'm telling you, under Barack Obama, it was going to get people killed, and probably did.
Yeah, no, it really bothers me that you can't shoot unless shot upon multiple times. We just watched the movie that comes to mind, 13 Hours about Benghazi. It's just unbelievable. The stand down call, don't do this, don't do that, no. That's how people get killed. That's and on our border, having the security moved around so that don't fight it. That's how people get killed.
The question now becomes, can Donald Trump turn that all around quick enough to really end up saving lives.
We see what he's done so far. How long has he been president? Very short amount of time. I'm actually stunned at the speed at which he's getting things done. So if this is something that we feel that we need to have done immediately, I'm sure President Trump is going to be the one to make sure that that happens.
All right, well, I'm going to tell you, one of the coolest things about CPAC for me is, look, I've talked to dozens, if not hundreds of politicians. And you know what? Many of them are good guys, some of them not so good guys. The pleasure for me to come out here is to shake the hands of you guys. Kerry Smith, thank you very, very much. Brian Smith, thank you very much for your service. Thank you guys for talking to us. I'll tell you, it's really an honor to talk to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. So that's what you get here at CPAC. It's good stuff, man. I'm Grant Stinchfield.
Oh, really?
It is good stuff, and that's what it's all about. When you talk about CPAC, you talk about the people coming here, those are the guys. And Bill, you've been coming here for a long time. Cam, you've been coming here for a long time. And that's the heart and soul of what this is all about, isn't it?
It is, and every year, you know, when you get to see these folks who come back year after year, and you get to meet the young guys, right? I mean, I've been coming to this. This is over 10 CPACs for me. So I've seen kids that were in college a decade ago. Now they got kids of their own, and every year you see the military cadets from the service academies, and they are so excited to be here, and you just can't help but feeling a little bit better about this country.
You know, we're waiting for Scott Walker to come over here. I think we're going to get him to stop by the NRA booth. But before we do that, I want to run a great little moment that happened here at CPAC. A husband bought his wife a life membership to the NRA. They live in New Jersey. It was for her birthday. All caught on tape. Let's roll it.
Tammy Payne, NRATV. Good 2 days for the deplorables, wouldn't you say?
I am so excited. I always wanted to be a deplorable, and I'm doing a great job at being one.
Now, you got a special gift recently.
I did. I'm so excited. My husband surprised me for my birthday with an NRA card. He loves me. And I love it. And he also got me a membership at a range in New Jersey, which is so not gun friendly. The NRA has a lot of work to do in New Jersey. It's really bad. But so we're kicking it in New Jersey for you. So I had to tell you that an NRA membership is a perfect birthday gift.
No doubt. Your thoughts on the CPAC convention so far?
This is my first CPAC, and I am loving it. There are so many incredible people here to meet. There are so many wonderful people to see. And it is really nice to be surrounded by people who make you realize, no, you're not crazy. This really is valid, and this really, it's okay to want to be a member of the NRA. It's okay to think that it's great to see, you know, Ted Cruz and the president's coming. It's so exciting. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome to the NRA family.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a proud member of the NRA. Thank you.
Well, and happy birthday to her as well. Great work by Tammy Payne, too. See, we even put the high-powered executives to work, and she's no stranger to TV, you know, a legend in Oklahoma. A legend in Oklahoma as far as TV goes, Tammy Payne, and she's doing great work out on the floor for us.
You were talking about the vets earlier, and just before we went on the air here with NRATV, I got to interview two guys from an organization called HCCvet.com, Honor, Courage, Commitment. And these guys are two Marines, and their entire job now and their entire website is about getting military people back into the civilian world. We take, you know, millions of dollars and months or if not years to train them how to get into the military, and we don't spend hardly a dime on training them to get out. And the suicide rate is, if we were taking those kind of casualties as battlefield casualties, there would be riots in the streets.
Yeah, the Honor, Courage, Commitment group are fabulous. I've done a little work with them in Dallas as well, and you know, that's one group we need to be committed with, and that's one group Barack Obama left behind. And I think the election of Donald Trump was, you know, we talk about gun rights, but I think we also talk about how Barack Obama hung our veterans out to dry under his watch.
Well, you look at the VA rule that was put in place, very similar to the Social Security gun grab, right? And the administration said, okay, if you can check these boxes here, then all of a sudden we're going to say you don't possess your rights anymore, right? We're going to take them away from you because you've got a fiduciary that's been appointed to help manage your affairs. Not because of any diagnosis, not because any doctor has said, listen, this individual is too dangerous, don't fire him, but because a bureaucrat can check a box. That was enough for the Obama administration. Then you look at the VA wait times. You know, again, it is going around the country this past year and listening to these veterans who are so angry and feel so ignored, not by the American people, right? Their friends and neighbors know who they are, but it was this administration. It was the feeling that Washington, D.C. didn't care about these men and women.
Yeah, and Obama basically threw away a win. I mean, Iraq, I think the last 5 months of Iraq under George Bush, there wasn't a single American casualty. You can argue about whether we should have been there in the first place or not, but it was secure. And then Barack Obama cannot sign a simple status of forces agreement, and
well,
you
Bill,
throw away a whole victory like that.
You throw it away, but we got the great governor of Wisconsin. How are you, sir? It's great to see you.
Governor Walker, how are you?
Wait, we can't shake your hand, Governor. We got to
high five.
High five.
High five.
There we go.
Don't let me hang
Governor,
it.
I would
There we
never.
go.
I would never. Governor, it's great to
You know,
have
I'm
you.
used to
Scott
Lambeau
Walker.
leaps, though, so it's it's not quite a high five, but Lambeau leap.
I've never seen any
out.
politician ever get a row of screaming teenagers high-fiving him like you're a
I think it's
basketball
probably
star.
because earlier today I talked about how we cut tuition in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
This budget, woo, college students.
Well, I'll tell you what you guys have done in Wisconsin should really be a model for America.
Thanks.
And you had a battle against you. And we were talking on this program about how, thanks to you and in many respects Paul Ryan setting up that infrastructure, they're trying to recall you, and you beat them back. You take out the unions. Boy, it's a model for fighting.
Well, it is. And part of what I told the folks here was that, you know, we've gone through this. When you talk about disrupting town hall meetings, I mean, my goodness, even the latest thing, Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, about 2 weeks ago tomorrow, actually, was blocked out of a public school just up the way in Washington, D.C. I called Betsy up. I've known her for years and said, been there, done that. They literally glued shut the doors on an elementary school I was going to years ago because they were protesting against me. The good news is they took them off the hinges. They opened the doors. I read to the kids. But it's just a great reminder to the people, not only in state governments, particularly here in the nation's national government, federal government, that, yeah, protesters have every right to be heard, but don't let the noise of the protest drown out the millions and millions of people who voted, everyday people living outside of Washington, who voted for the kind of changes that they expect out of this president, this Congress, and they certainly have expected for years out of us in the states.
Well, hopefully they see some of the things that you've done in Wisconsin. You know, you beat back the unions. There was a time and place for unions in America at one time, but, boy, they were killing Wisconsin.
Well, particularly in the public sector. You know, they were, for taxpayers, it wasn't just balancing budgets, although we've saved state and local taxpayers over $5 billion since our reforms, but it was also just work rules. Simple things like saying, you know, now we don't have seniority. We can hire and fire based on merit. We can pay based on performance. We can put the best and the brightest in our schools, in our other government positions. It really makes a huge difference. And those are the sorts of things I think now more than ever they need to do in our federal government. But in a bigger sense, and I've told Wayne LaPierre this before, and Chris Cox and others, for us it was part of this larger argument about freedom. And we're going to stand up for freedom. We don't selectively pick which part of the Constitution we believe in. It's all there. We embrace it all. And it's really about giving the people of our state and in turn the people of our nation more of their God-given freedoms back.
So what do you do about the groups that are coming into Wisconsin, and I've seen them, to take away our freedom, specifically the Second Amendment? You've got Every Town for USA, Bloomberg-funded groups from a mansion in New York City. He thinks what's knows what's right for other states. What do you do about them? Because I'm not sure you got the backing completely of some of these lawmakers in Wisconsin.
Well, we keep pushing. We keep in the message. I always tell people I don't do my lobbying in the Capitol. I do it my father's a preacher, so I do it at the pulpit, the bully pulpit all around my state. The people of our state, across political spectrums, not just Republicans and conservatives, but there's a lot of folks, even some card-carrying union members who believe in the Second Amendment, who love the heritage that we have of hunting and fishing and trapping in our state, and who understand that it's not just about those feelings of freedom, it's also about fighting back with facts. And the facts are law-abiding citizens aren't the people we should worry about.
Well,
it's the guys who are criminals.
You've got the mayor of Milwaukee right now that's actually blaming concealed carry for the increase in homicides in his city.
Which is just absolutely ridiculous, because somebody who is abiding by the law is not the person they should worry about. It's the guy who repeatedly breaks the law, who's not going to abide by yet one more law out there, who gets in the way. And part of it's not even just law enforcement. I'm a huge backer of our law enforcement in our state. But part of it just starts all the way in the family and with a strong, intact structure of teaching values and virtues. That's how you fight crime and you fight some of the challenges we face. But usually politicians who don't have an answer, they want to blame it on something. And so, for guns, some of it's an easy target.
You know, Governor, for you spend your time actually telling the truth and going out and correcting lies. Ed Flynn, the mayor of Milwaukee, said CHL holders are responsible for the increased crime. We've invited him on to NRATV numerous times. He will not come on because he can't back it up, but that's what we're up against. If we have a police chief who's willing to lie to the people of his city and the country, boy, they're willing to do anything.
The good news is, though, not only in rural parts where you think hunting and fishing would be a big deal, but even in the county I raised my kids in Milwaukee County, our kids were raised in Wauwatosa. Even there's a lot of people who appreciate the Second Amendment. And even in some of the most crime-stricken neighborhoods, they love the fact that I signed the law of concealed carry, that I signed Castle Doctrine, because they want to protect themselves, their family, and their property, and they want to have the edge if someone's coming out against them. And there's not enough time sometimes for the law enforcement to react. They've got to have the ability to do it in their own homes with their own families.
Governor Walker, just real quick, I remember when you first got the